Hello there, Crafty Doer. Jessica Michaels here. Welcome back to the Crafty Doings Mixed Media Paper Crafts. Welcome if you are new. This video is for Ranger Ink, and I will be creating an art journaling spread, sharing my tips and inspiration on how to seamlessly combine junk journaling and mixed media. So grab a comfy chair, grab all your crafty things, and let's get into the crafty doings. Junk journaling is making such a huge comeback. I love it so much. So for this spread, I wanted to share how I like to junk journal. Because I am a mixed media artist, I can't help it but to add mixed media to my paper projects. So to begin, I select this very complex and layered design on this pattern paper from the 6x8 paper collection. Then I'm going to start tearing it apart, probably 4 to 5 pieces. When I art journal, I like to just work on a single page. However, I also like to kind of have my design bleed on to the other page. That way, honestly, for one, I feel like I'm not wasting a whole page by leaving it completely empty, but also it's very appealing to the eye when I go through my pages. So my eye is not going from this beautiful creation to just a blank page. Once I have torn my pattern paper into 4 to 5 pieces, I like to cut the corners off if I am going to adhere them down to the corner of my page. That way I don't have to fussy cut around it because sometimes it's a little challenging with the entire journal. I like to focus on adhering my pattern paper on the edges of my journaling page and also maybe one almost in the center of the page because this will make the 2 pages seem as one instead of 2 separate pages. Now I'm going to grab my mint chill dye ink and press it down onto my glassworking surface so that I can get my palette knife and dip it into my texture paste that is in opaque matte. And essentially what I'm doing is tinting the paste. It's easiest to do this with a palette knife, and once I am happy with the tint that I see, I'm going to grab some of that texture paste and scrape it across my journaling pages. The idea here is to scrape it on the edges of the pattern paper that have been adhered to the page so that it looks like one whole piece, instead of just random pieces of pattern paper glued onto this journaling page. It kind of melts it into the journaling page. Once I am done with that, I am going to use my heat drying tool to dry this layer and move on to the next step. Now I'm going to do a little bit of reverse stenciling, and an easy way to do this is just to grab the Rainforest dye ink pad and smoosh it down onto the stencil and then lightly spritz it with some water. Very important to wipe off any excess ink or water that is on the border of the stencil so that doesn't leave a print on the journaling page. When I press down, it is important to use a cloth or paper towel to press down the stencil with so that it absorbs any liquid or ink that is trying to spill, and then that'll distort the print. I like to use my finger to help kind of splatter a little bit of that ink on the edges of the print so it looks a little bit more organic. I can always print a second generation by lightly spritzing it with water again. Another reason why I love the Distress sprayer, because it is kind of like a mist and it's guaranteed to distribute evenly. If there is not enough ink for a second generation print, then repeat the process and focus on areas where there isn't much going on the journal page. Feel comfortable and free to rotate the stencil as well and repeat as many times as desired. After drying that layer with my heat drying tool, I'm going to come in with Tim Holtz's stamp collection French Garden, and I'm actually only going to use the text and script rubber stamp. I am going to add a little bit more depth and interest to my mixed media background by using the color Shamrock and Rainforest to stamp these texts and script. These analogous colors will most definitely help with highlight those same colors that are found in my pattern paper, but also blend so smoothly because in the color scheme, they are under the same umbrella. And just as I encourage you to not be afraid to rotate your stencil when we did a little reverse stenciling, do the same with stamping. Now it's time to start melting all of these layers together. And an easy way to do that is by adding a little bit of watercoloring across the entire page. I love these 49 and Market Dye inks because it makes this type of technique so easy. Just simply smoosh down some ink directly from my ink pad onto my glass working surface, spray it with some water, and pick it up with a paintbrush. I am generally going to focus on areas that are clean and also the edges, and then I'm also going to try to use up all of my product by splattering. One of the last ways I'm going to really try to melt all these layers into one is by adding a little bit of gesso across the entire page. But I think the white is a little too bright for the vintage junk journaling vibe that I'm going for. So I am going to smoosh it down, some cappuccino down onto my glass working surface, and then add a little bit of the white gesso. Now I am intentionally not going to mix it very well so that when I do scrape the gesso across the page, I'm going to get little peekaboos of that white. I am going to focus on the edges of the pattern paper as well as the edges of the journaling pages when I am scraping the white gesso. After ensuring that the white gesso is completely dry, I'm going to go in with some washi tape. I feel like washi tape is such a junk journaling thing to do. And I got so excited because this collection comes with these strips and this diagonal pink stripe strip called My Name. It really helps bring out the pink in the pattern paper. And the excitement got the best of me and I adhered it down, I think, way too soon, and you'll see why. But now I'm going to go into the die cutting elements in this collection. I'm going to search for pieces that kind of resemble journaling bits. So anything that looks like an old piece of ephemera as opposed to like a cute little, I don't know, button or an animal or anything like that. Those are the pieces that I'm going to pull out. Why? Because it screams junk journaling. When I've selected what I want, I am going to use my distresser to distress all of the edges. as well as ink blend the edges with cappuccino. The beautiful thing about washi tape is that it's so forgiving, so I can easily lift this washi tape off of my journal page and tuck my piece of ephemera right under it. I love this idea. I see this element in a lot of junk journals, so this screams junk journal to me. So I'm most definitely not going to skip out on the washi tape. Another detail that screams junk journaling to me are staples, brads even, little things that cling and dangle, but I don't have any of those at hand. I do, however, have a stapler, so I am going to crisscross staple some of these pieces of journaling bits, ephemera, die cut elements, whatever it is you call them, and continue to layer all of these elements. I decide to go in with one last strip of washi tape. This one is a row of stamps, and I thought it was just perfect to tie all of the florals that I am about to add from the laser cut elements. And I want to add these into the background because I want a layer to separate the die cut elements from my mixed media background. So I thought this would be a perfect solution to that. And selected a sentiment for my journaling page. I'm going to use scrapbook adhesive squares to elevate my sentiment on my page. I'm also going to use these itty bitty little circles, some with the butterflies, some with the birds, and to embellish my page. And I am going to elevate those as well using scrapbook adhesive foam squares. Now that I have my mind on elevating some elements, I have a pretty cool trick that I want to share with you. It's not my trick per se, but I like to make my florals almost three-dimensional by simply pinching the edges of the flowers and leaves from away from the pages so they look like they're kind of coming at you. Now I'm going to use some dilutional paint in white and dilute it a little bit with some water for some splattering. I am going to keep the splatter in a diagonal direction and cover my sentiment so that I don't get any white on it and distort what it says. I I love that I was still able to create a mixed media background, throw in some elements, and it gave that junk journaling vibe. I love that I was also able to combine the two seamlessly with some mixed media techniques. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already subscribed for more mixed media inspiration and encouragement. Be sure to let me know in the comment section below which technique was your favorite. Also, don't forget to check out the Ranger blog under project tutorials to find a step-by-step guide for this project and many more of my other mixed media journaling pages. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next crafty doings.